rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective with your host, me. Oh, apparently I am getting very predictable. Not that I haven't heard that before, but Coco Dominky over on Rumble says that listening to my intro is like listening to a cassette tape over and over again. You know exactly when the next song starts and how it starts. Oh, okay. Maybe I need to shift things up a little bit. Change some music. I don't know. We'll see. It takes a little bit for me to get that done. And of course, it does what it needs to. It does what it needs to. Anyway, hello, everybody. It's Monday. Welcome back. I hope you had a great rest of the weekend from the broadcast on Saturday. Or since the broadcast on Saturday. That's if you were there and listening. If not, you listen to it on all of my outlets, whether they be audio or video or whatever. And I do appreciate all of you because, again, this show is for you. Honestly, it is for you. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Judge Wild is up tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance. So please, if you are of mind, please stand, remove your hat, and join with Judge in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you, Judge, for that wonderful rendition of our Pledge of Allegiance. Of course, we start the show with that. If you would like to get your version of the Pledge of Allegiance on the broadcast, all you need to do is record yourself. You can do it on a phone or whatever, whatever kind of recording app, even like a voice note or something like that. And then you can send it to me to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will take it and get it into the rotation. I like to hear from my Whiskey Warriors. For those of you that don't know about the Whiskey Warriors and the Whiskey Warrior P1s, well, it's a long time. This show used to be called Whiskey Musings. In fact, I'm still referred to as Whiskey by some of the long-time folks, which is not a problem. I'm okay with that. But before it became American Perspective, it was called Whiskey Musings, and everybody that was there was the Whiskey Warrior. And they decided, because of course this show is for the watchers and the listeners, they decided to go ahead and hang on to the Whiskey Warrior name. So that's what we did. So if you want to be a Whiskey Warrior P1, make sure you follow me on the socials and also join rumble.com. Get yourself a subscription. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. You can just sign up. And once you sign up, be sure to find American Perspective, the channel, and follow it. And that's how you become a Whiskey Warrior P1. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this started. For my first sponsor, I'm going to tell you about True Grit Roots Network and TGRN Blues. TGRN Blues is our 365-day, 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day blues channel. And one of the fantastic shows that we have available for you airs Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Central, and an encore presentation on Saturday 8 p.m. Central. This is my partner in this endeavor. It is his show. It's called Mighty Mouth Blues. It is exclusively on the True Grit Roots Network, TGRN Blues. Listen to this. Mighty Mouth Blues is hosted and produced by multi-award winner Jonathan Oogie Richards and his daughter Amber Burr Hill. Mighty Mouth Blues brings the hottest mix of new blues and old school hits, along with interviews with artists and blues news makers shaping the today's blues from all parts of the world. Believe me, they get together and it's a fun time. You got to go and check it out. Again, that's tomorrow night is when it airs. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. I know Central Time, that means that you would have to cut off this broadcast to listen. Too bad. Either way, you can go ahead and do that, or you can catch them Saturday at 8 p.m. as well for that show. Once again, that's Mighty Mouth Blues exclusively on the True Grit Roots Network, TGRN Blues. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central and Saturday, 8 p.m. Central. Go ahead and give them a listen sometime. It's okay. I'll let you go. It's fine. I'm recorded, so you can listen to me again later on. That's fine. Anyway, tgrn.net, based out of Austin, Texas, is where you can find you can listen right through your browser, or you can check us out in the Live 365 catalog of digital radio stations, as well as through the Audacity, AUDACY app. That is Audacity, AUDACY app. Or sorry, Odyssey. Now I keep mispronouncing it. Audacity is a program. Odyssey is the app. But anyway, so AUDACY is how that's spelled. You can find it and pick it up. Anyway, True Grit Roots Network, TGRN.net, out of Austin, Texas. All right, good enough. Okay. So, one thing that has been completely missing in our society today, and yes, it is our society today, has to deal with accountability and consequences. We've been giving too many light taps on the wrist. We've been allowing criminals to get away with criminal behavior way too much. We've been allowing these youngsters who are coming up, the Gen Zers, who are coming into this world. They're starting to proliferate outside of college now. They're getting ready to get out of college, and there's been no consequences for these people. We all listen to the Dr. Spock, and no, I'm not talking about the Star Trek Dr. Spock, but we've all listened to Dr. Spock and how, it is bad for their psyche to have them lose, or it's bad for their psyche to be punished. You shouldn't use punishment. You should use positive reinforcement. And we've been giving out participation trophies and all kinds of things, going out to these folks and saying, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's how you play the game. Well, what this has done is bred a level of entitlement that many of us who are older and a lot more wiser are looking at it and going, what in the heck is going on here? It doesn't have to, punishment. The punishment actually doesn't have to be necessarily anything physical. It also doesn't necessarily have to be anything that is emotional scarring or mentally scarring or anything of that nature. But what it does need to be is it needs to be of a type that you put down a line in the sand and you don't allow these people to cross it. In other words, you have standards, and standards are to be upheld and kept. You cannot sit here and tell me that allowing somebody to get their way just because they throw a freaking temper tantrum in a damn department store because they haven't gotten what they wanted is good for anyone. And you just, I've seen parents where, they let them cry and then they'll go, no, I'll get you what you want, sweetie. It's okay. I grew up in the time, shut up or I'll give you something to cry about. That was my parenting. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I didn't really have that bad of an upbringing, to be real about it. I mean, there were times when I didn't get what I wanted, which was fine. It's okay, because that's life. There are times where you aren't going to get what you want. For an example, just because you run the race in like a track and field or something along those lines, just because you run the race doesn't mean you win the trophy. The trophy is reserved for the people who come in first, second, or third. In other words, the top echelons, the ones that can actually perform the task to the best of their ability above everyone else that does it. And it's okay. Not everybody can be a jock. Not everybody can be a nerd. Not everybody can be the good-looking one who gets all the girls or the guys or whatever else. Not everyone has the ability to be everything all at once. And that piece and part and parcel of what is going on in terms of today's world, there's some college kids that are waking up and realizing, oh my gosh, this is real life. My choices actually have consequences, and I'm being held accountable. And this goes on even as so far beyond just your childhood or your early adulthood. This goes on throughout the entirety of life. And as of right now, Hamas is learning a very, very bad decision that they made on October 7th is giving them all kinds of fits right now. Let me tell you what I'm talking about for those that may not have noticed or known on this. Hamas is now in their final stronghold, from what reports are saying. There's a city called Rafah that Hamas has been pulled back into because of the Israeli Defense Forces driving them that way. And now Israel has begun targeted strikes against Hamas in Rafah. Now, the Israeli army, which honestly has been bending over backwards in an attempt to limit the amount of civilian casualties in this conflict, they reached out to the area of Rafah and said, you folks, you better get out, which they do. By the way, they're the only army in the world that I'm aware of that actually gives their plans and gives away their entire, like, where they're going to strike, when they're going to strike. They're the only place or the only army that I'm aware of that will actually compromise operational security in that fashion in order to make sure that the civilians are out of the way. They've done this the entire time. They do this all the time. And what the pro-Palestinian folks don't seem to understand is that over 3/4 of the Gaza Strip, the people in the Gaza Strip, actually wanted Hamas as their controlling government. They actually applauded Hamas when Hamas did October 7th. They believe in what Hamas is doing. Now, some could say, okay, they've been indoctrinated into that, and there is a case that can be made for that. But the fact of the matter is that the the vast majority of the Palestinians who live in the Gaza Strip are in cahoots with Hamas, believe in what Hamas is doing, and are cheering for Hamas whenever Hamas strikes Israel and the Israelis. And this is also evident by all of the campus stuff that's going on here in the U.S., where they are blocking Jewish students from getting to schools or from getting to their class. They're stopping and preventing the free movement of these individuals who here in the United States, you actually have that as a right to be able to freely move about the country. That is something that we as a country believe in, that you cannot block people out. And yet some of the Hamas protesters on some of these universities have actually been advocating for a segregation, such as, oh no, you can't come into the building this way. You must go over to the Jewish door. And that's what these people are trying to do. They are attempting to bring back segregation in a country that fought an entire freaking civil war, the most deadliest war, in order to try and end some of that, and went through a huge period of unrest that culminated in the Civil Rights Act of 1965 that allowed for the desegregation of our culture and to try and turn us into more of a melting pot. That America has withstood and stood against these kinds of activities, and yet we allow them to continue on our campuses and allow them to assault people at our campuses. This is all the left's doing. Every little bit of it is the left's doing as far as the campuses are concerned. Now, to get back to the Israeli conflict, there was a report, an early report, that Hamas actually approved a ceasefire agreement with Israel. Well, folks, this ceasefire agreement, number one, didn't come from anybody in the West. In fact, it was supposedly a framework that was put forth by Egypt and Qatar, and had nothing in it, reportedly, because not everybody really has seen this supposed ceasefire agreement, the details of it, but supposedly didn't have anything for the release of the hostages, which is, as you recall, in a past episode, I was telling you how the top commander of Hamas was using 15 to 20 of those hostages in Rafah to protect himself, as they consistently do. See, that's just taking it right out of the playbook. Now, Hamas didn't send this statement out until Israel started talking about, hey, evacuate in Rafah, get out. And then all of a sudden this report comes out. And so, of course, immediately the left starts going, oh, Israel turned down this ceasefire agreement. When Hamas has been turning down ceasefire agreements that Israel has proposed for many, many times in this entire conflict. And of course, the left and the sycophantic followers on social media were calling this a genocide, which it's nowhere near a genocide, folks. This has nothing. If you wanted genocide, all Israel would have had to do was bring out a few planes, bomb the crap out of the entire Gaza Strip. That would have been a genocide. But they didn't do that. They are calling people and telling people to get out and go take cover. And they're doing strategic strikes on known Hamas terrorist locations. They are doing everything they can to avoid civilian casualties. And yet all of this is being swept under the rug by the left. Well, while all of this is occurring, wonderful Joe Biden, this report came out, this in the Washington Examiner. Biden administration mum on report of withheld military support for Israel. Israeli officials told Axios that the ammunition shipment to Israel was stopped last week, which marks the first time since the October 7th attack that the U.S. has halted a weapons shipment intended for the Israeli military. The Department of Defense and State Department declined to comment on the Washington Examiner on the news. A National Security Council spokesperson declined to comment on the specifics as well, but provided a statement on the U.S.'s general support for Israel. Yeah. So apparently there is a report that came out that dealt with the fact that the Biden administration has put a hold on a shipment of U.S. ammunition to Israel. Yeah. He's begging and pleading people in Michigan for Michigan to, these people in Michigan who've been criticizing him for his pro-Israel stance in this conflict. And he's been begging and pleading for them to vote for him because they voted no contest no preference or whatever it was in the primaries and demonstrated to him that they are looking to not support him for this. And here he is, potentially withholding support to Israel in an obvious press to try and garner support for his campaign. That, by the way, is floundering like crazy. And to go even one step further, the Biden administration is pondering the idea of importing Gazan refugees to here. Now, this is ridiculous, and even immigration experts are warning that this would be a national security disaster. Here in the Daily Caller, that's the headline. Immigration experts warn possible Biden plan to import Gazan refugees would be a national security disaster. And the reason being is because, we in the West have a propensity to want to believe in the goodness that can exist in people. But the answer to that goodness is not to show them weakness or compassion or anything of that nature if they are going to be a group of individuals who literally do not want any of that. Folks, there are individuals in this world who honestly would just as soon kill you as look at you. There are groups of people in this world who want nothing to do with the West, who want nothing to do with Christianity or the idea of mercy or any of that. And this is reflected completely in the idea that, they are looking to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to eliminate all forms of Western culture and to impose Sharia law everywhere. They want the Quran to be the only religion available. And of course, that's not what America stands for. But at the same time, there are groups who work within this country who are literally professing allegiance to these types of people when they themselves would be the first ones thrown off a building. When they would be the first ones who would have their head chopped off. When they would be the first ones who would be whipped or stoned to death due to their religious zealousy. When you look at organizations such as Queers for Palestine, Lesbians for Palestine, LGBTQ, all of that for Palestine, you are literally looking at straight up ignorance or stupidity. One of the two. Now, if they're ignorant, most of the time, when you look at somebody who is ignorant, you educate them and they are no longer ignorant. And then, of course, they come around and they realize what they did wrong or what they did or what they knew was not true, and they allow it to go. But instead, if you want stupidity, those are the ones that no matter how many times you show them the truth, you present them with the evidence, the facts, the reality of the situation, and they refuse to listen and refuse to see. That is exactly where stupidity reigns. And many of these people who are protesting on our college campuses are too young, but they are one or the other. They are either ignorant, in which case they get educated and they learn and they grow out of it, or they are just plain flat out stupid and they continue down that path where eventually they will learn or die. I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of the case where it is with these zealots. But it's kind of interesting to see even the left starting to realize that maybe certain things are not quite as they seem. For an example, this literally comes from Politico, folks. This right here. Pro-Palestinian protesters are backed by a surprising source: Biden's biggest donors. Now, for any of us who have a functioning brain, which includes pretty much all of my Whiskey Warriors and anybody who is on the conservative side of the aisle, this comes as no surprise. In fact, I've even argued about it on the social medias with regards to people such as Soros, George Soros, who is a part of it. But it's a little refreshing, even though I don't believe they actually meant it this way. But I believe it's refreshing to actually see the left go and admit something like this. Because believe me, I've been attacked by people who seem to think that George Soros is just a boogeyman for the right. But he's not. So here from the Politico piece, President Joe Biden has been dogged for months by pro-Palestinian protesters calling him Genocide Joe. But some of the groups behind the demonstrations receive financial backing from philanthropists pushing hard for his re-election. The donors include some of the biggest names in Democratic circles: Soros, Rockefeller, and Pritzker, according to a Politico analysis. Two of the organizers supporting the protests at Columbia University and on other campuses are Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now. Both are supported by the Tides Foundation, which is seeded by Democratic mega donor George Soros and was previously supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It in turn supports numerous small nonprofits that work for social change. Soros, of course, declined to comment, and Bill and Melinda Gates which has previously funded the Tides Foundation and other groups, said it no longer has active grants to Tides. And apparently the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also does not support Jewish Voice for Peace, and If Not Now. But here's the thing, okay? Regardless of where all this money is coming from, the fact of the matter is that now even Politico, a complete left-wing magazine, is demonstrating that it is the Democrats and their mega money donors who are funding these very, I'll call them well-organized, places on the universities, and are affecting our young children, young adults, and are turning them into weapons for the left. Now, I don't, most of you probably haven't seen these, but I've seen some of the videos where they are, some of the people who are at these rallies don't even have any idea of what they're protesting for. They have literally no clue. Now, some of these protests have actually gotten wise to citizen journalists going out there with their phones and videotaping and posting them online to show how stupid they are by sitting there and asking them a question. What are you protesting? Nowadays, apparently the word has gotten out. And so now they'll just refer to whoever is asking the question to the community community organizer or whatever the overarching organization is, in order to be able to convince you that their cause is just. But unfortunately for the truth and the facts of all these people who sit here and talk about how Israel is committing genocide, which it's not. I've already clearly put that out in evidence. And you can read it off of the news media that's coming in. Anyone with a critical thinking brain can figure that one out fairly quickly. But the thing that is completely scary about this is how easily our young people, at least some of them, have been sucked in to these kinds of things. There's video of young university students who swear that they've converted or are planning on converting to Islam, and they joined in one of the prayers that was occurring on one of the university campuses. And the funny thing, or, well, I won't say funny, but the interesting angle to all of this is that half of the people that were doing this would be snuffed out by any devout believer who is an extreme believer, by any of these Palestinians. In fact, there was a video that was running around and discussed by a few people of a individual who identified themselves as being trans, that was saying that, oh my gosh, I read the Quran, and Allah is transcends gender. And while that may be true, the fact of the matter is, though, that that individual would last maybe 30 seconds in a heavy Islamic country that doesn't have the acceptance like the Palestinians. See, what a lot of people don't understand is that the Quran views women as property. The Quran views homosexuality as being completely wrong. The Quran views things like transgenderism as wrong. And they will, in the more extreme countries over there, they will actually kill gays and lesbians. And yet these groups want to align themselves for whatever misguided reason with these organizations, only because of the fact, and my guess is that they are anti-Zionist, which I'm not even really sure why they even think that. But this is exactly the kinds of things that these types of groups that you see being funded by these Democrat mega donors are trying to do in terms of brainwashing our children. This is exactly why the universities and our education system being taken over by the Department of Education and the Democratic machine has been doing to our children for a very long time. Now, the good news out of all this is that these protests are starting to wake people up. I talked about the last couple of episodes about the young people who have stepped in, the young frat brothers who all stepped in and held up that flag, about the anti-protests that were going on along the South and how they were, engaged with the protesters in a peaceful manner by presenting an all-American unified front, by singing the Star-Spangled Banner, by flying Old Glory, by making it demonstrably clear that the American people, at least in the heartland, in places where the American heartbeat is strong and that the American heart is alive and well, that these people do not have a place when they are bringing that kind of hate and demonstrably anti-American belief system here. But now some accountability is coming. Now we have some consequences. This in Just the News: colleges kowtow to protesters but are met with blowback from donors. Even schools that have not come to an agreement with protesters have lost donors. At least half a dozen colleges and universities have come to an agreement with anti-Israel protesters on campus over the past week, while other schools are not taking action to stop the illegal encampments. While the pro-Palestinian demonstrators celebrated the decisions as victories, donors are less than happy. One of the most notable schools to reach an agreement with demonstrators is, of course, Brown University, where administrators last week committed to allowing students to speak with the school's investment advisory committee about divesting from Israel-linked companies before holding a vote on the matter. The agreement at Brown also stated that no one who participated in the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, they've got a name for it now rather than just an occupation, would face retaliation over the demonstration, and that students who participated would be, at worst, subjected to an administrative review meeting, but they would not be at risk of being suspended or expelled. Billionaire real estate mogul Barry Sternlicht, who has previously donated more than $20 million to Brown, said that he has paused donations to the school because he found the agreement with the demonstrators unconscionable. Yeah. Well, it's okay. So Northwestern University also had some agreements as well. And while it's unclear, agreements with the pro-Palestinian protesters, I should say, while it's unclear whether any big name donors have pulled back from Northwestern, the school's Jewish center, known as the Hillel, said on Facebook that it has received many questions from the community about how to support students at this time. The center advised the public to contact university officials directly and to donate for the center's activities. Yeah. Some donors who have given more than $130,000 to the New Jersey flagship school, Rutgers University, decided to stop donating before the school made an agreement with the protesters. Yeah. So they're starting to feel the pain, folks, and they need to. They absolutely need to. This crap doesn't need to happen on campuses. Well, it's not just the schools that are feeling it. I want to play this video clip here. This was posted by the Post Millennial on X. This is in particular an ASU student, meaning Arizona State University, who apparently, well, she apparently joined in the protests and was arrested at a Gaza camp. Yeah, let's just go ahead and take a listen to this interview real quick.
I mean, I'm a little disappointed. I'm being restricted from a lot of things right now that I didn't expect to be for standing up for something that I believe in. You know, I have family coming in who I have to let them know to, you know, not come to my graduation ceremonies. I am glad that there is a guarantee that my courses will be taken care of, so I don't have to worry necessarily about my graduation requirements and the fact that I will earn my degree as I have spent the past 4 years doing, but I'm just disappointed. I mean, I'm a 2020 high school grad, so I wasn't able to walk then. And so, you know, here it is. I'm not able to walk now.
So to kind of sum it up, what she's talking about here is she'll still be able to graduate. She just can't participate in the ceremony for her graduation. Folks. And while, you know, that sounds sad, especially for those of you that did not have a 2020 graduate, and by that I mean the whole COVID thing. I had one. My son was a 2020 high school graduate, and they literally took away just about everything because of all of the stupid restrictions that they placed on gatherings and everything else. But beyond that, just the point of she made a decision. And guess what? When you're an adult, there's times where you're going to have to make tough decisions. You may not be able to do what you want to do just because you believe in it. You may not be able to do that. You have other priorities that might need to take precedence. For an example, maybe you should have thought about getting arrested being such a fantastic idea to go and, you know, present yourself about all your friends and family that are coming into town. Maybe you should have thought about that. Like, oh my gosh, I wonder what kind of an impact this is going to have on me being able to actually walk down the aisle, my parents and grandparents and whoever else I might have coming into town, being able to see, well, you know, maybe I shouldn't be someplace that is full of a bunch of people that are eventually potentially going to get arrested here because we're breaking the law. Because peaceful protests are allowed, but breaking the law is not. Maybe you should have thought about that, sweetheart. Welcome to adulthood. Welcome to reality. And it's not just her. It's not just ASU. There are also several other students that have honestly canceled graduation ceremonies because of the ongoing protests. And so now what you're ending up with is a group of individuals who are now taking away the rights of others. Just like they need to understand that there are accountability and consequences for your actions. Just like when you threw a baseball through a neighbor's window when I grew up, my parents paid for that window. But believe me, I paid for it. And yet here we are. We have things like Joe Biden excusing or eliminating debt for their student loans. That's what I'm looking for. For the student loans, you have all kinds of things like that going on. And you took out the loan. You got a bullcrap degree that is not getting you anywhere in life. And yet you're expecting somebody else to foot the bill, just like your parents do. Yeah, the chickens have come home to roost. Speaking about Joe Biden and student loans, only because it's tangentially connected to this whole university thing, Joe Biden, well, his intern, or whoever is the White House person who runs that account on X, Joe Biden put out a tweet on his political account on X, and here's what it said. My administration will never stop working to cancel student debt, no matter how many times Trump and the extreme mega Republicans try to stop us. Now, if you're on the left, you would look at that and you would think, okay, that's like Joe Biden not giving up. That's more of like a rallying cry. But in reality, that's more of like a slap in the face that Joe Biden or whoever runs his account is actually bragging about going against the Supreme Court on the student debt, because late last June, the Supreme Court actually struck down President Joe Biden's student loan bailout plan. And he still has continued, despite the fact that Nancy Pelosi correctly, according to the information the Constitution has in it, correctly stated the president cannot forgive that debt. He can only postpone payments. Because again, Joe Biden executes the laws. Congress is the one that creates them, and Congress has what's known as the power of the purse. Congress is the one that would have to forgive these loans, not Joe Biden. But yeah, he's still talking about it, and he is definitely bragging about it, which is making a lot of people, at least the ones on in the recipient side, they're like, oh my gosh, my loan got, this one guy posted on X here recently where he's like, oh my gosh, my loan is at zero now. My account is at zero. I had over $19,000 worth in principal, I guess, to pay back. Well, yeah. Biden also put forth a comment about a comment about women on X, and in particular, he's talking again because the left seems to think that abortion is the issue for voters, and I've already shown you, I showed you the video of CNN basically doing a poll saying, no, abortion is only 5%, where things like immigration and the economy are, 23 and 24% respectively. But Biden, that Biden X account again put out this November, voters are going to teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women of America. Well, guess what, folks? The pushback has started because people came back, like, for an example, Marsha Blackburn said, can you even define a woman? Yeah, which is true. Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares, this is the Virginia AG, who is probably, I'm guessing, I don't know this for a fact, but he is, I'm guessing he's going to join in with a bunch of states, including the state of Texas, to go after the Biden administration for this. But he wrote a response saying, I just think the Biden administration is a classic case of being so open-minded, your brain falls right out. And hey, you know what? Those wonderful polling numbers, by the way. Yeah, all those women who have been ranting and raving and saying on X that, oh, this is Rovember. Yeah, I'm not sold that that's going to happen, because here in Rasmussen, which is a, I won't say not quite a left wing, but leaning left or polling organization, posted this: if the 2024 candidates for president were Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein, who would you vote for? And then they posted the women-only responses. Donald Trump came up at 47%, a full 11 points higher than Joe Biden, who came in at 36%. Kennedy didn't even break double digits, and West and Stein were statistically insignificant. And by the way, Rasmussen also pointed out that those numbers include those elusive and exclusive suburban women that the left keeps talking about in terms of their abortion. The whole abortion Rovember thing is going to happen. I have my doubts that that is going to be a huge factor in this election. Well, we're starting to see, not only is the issue of his speaking and posting and standing in front of reporters and looking like he's crapping his pants as he's walking out to the helicopter. I don't know if anybody has seen that video. That's just hilarious. But now the Biden advisors are actually starting to say that they are not going to allow Joe Biden additional time in front of the cameras. So he's been gaffing a lot lately, and I do mean a lot. He's been gaffing quite a bit. And now his staff reportedly are aiming to shorten his speeches. They're stressing quality over quantity, although I don't know how they're going to get quality out of this guy, because this guy is just absolutely horrible. But he has had plenty of, according to this town hall piece, plenty of Ron Burgundy-like blunders with the teleprompter in recent weeks. And with the campaign schedule about to get busier, there's no doubt that Biden is potentially going to devolve into a more incoherent mess than what he already is. Well, that's kind of funny, because they keep trying to say that Biden is sharp as a tack, and yet here they are basically going to try and attempt the basement strategy once again to get him to hide for this campaign, this upcoming campaign. And here they're going to limit his speeches. They're going to limit him in order to try and guardrail against his fights with the teleprompter and his gaffes and him getting lost and not knowing where he is and what he is doing. Just like what they're doing with gathering the people around him as they are walking him out to the helicopter to ensure that the press can't videotape his awkward gait. Makes it look like he's dropped a load in his pants. But they're going through and they're essentially trying to protect him more and more, even as the press is starting to realize that this guy probably isn't what they need him to be. All right. One last thing, just to shift gears off of Joe, because I know some people are, so I've heard from a few people that are like, why do you always rip on Joe? Well, it's too easy for me to rip on Joe. Joe is just an easy target, I'll admit. But more things have occurred in the New York City Trump case, the Alvin Bragg Trump case, that of course turns on Bragg. Well, you know, I'm going to be, if we had an honest judge, like a real honest judge, instead of this Merchant guy, this case would have been thrown out as soon as the first few witnesses had gotten placed on the stand, and essentially the prosecution's witnesses so far have been making the defense's case for them. And it didn't quit, even today. So a former controller, and for those of you who aren't part of the accounting world, a controller is the person who controls the books and the money. A former controller for the Trump organization took the witness stand on Monday and literally told in his testimony that he was the one who labeled in the books that Michael Cohen's payments were legal fees. He also stated that President Trump never communicated with him on this stuff. That the payments at the center of the case were legal expenses, and that he was not personally directed by the former president to make these payments. Yeah, this judge, this is, I mean, realistically, let's be honest here. This is essentially a done deal, no matter what kind of evidence is going to be presented to him. I'm fairly certain this New York City jury will find for the prosecution on this, and it'll have to go to appeal. But yeah, the gentleman, his name's Jeffrey McConney. McConney also made a comment that the antiquated software that they're using pretty much locked things in to where you couldn't change it to be something. It couldn't change the reason for the payment to be something other than legal fees, and that there was little that they could actually do. And also, this proves as well that Trump has nothing to do with this. So how could it be an election violation when Trump had nothing to do with it, nor the Trump campaign? And also, too, I saw this posted on the socials, but I didn't track it down, but I saw it was posted on the socials that the actual check that they're claiming was the money for the payment was paid and written out by nobody that would basically not even Trump himself, President Trump himself didn't write the check. It was actually Eric, I believe, and Don Jr., whose names were on the check. And they wrote it to Michael Cohen for legal expenses. So it's not like Trump actually directed anybody to do anything special. Yeah, this case is falling apart, people. And the prosecution is about the only thing that is really positive for the Democrats right now is the gag order that Trump has, to where he potentially, because that was another thing that Marchand hit him with, that he potentially could get thrown in jail if he doesn't stop talking about the case. Which realistically, I mean, that is questionable, unconstitutionally, or constitutionally questionable anyway, as far as that goes. All right, I am out of time. So I appreciate all of you for coming. Please do me a favor. If you're not already on Rumble, go over to rumble.com, get yourself an account, and follow American Perspective channel. Also, if you are in Rumble and signed in, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button so that we can get the show onto the leaderboard. That it would be absolutely awesome to do. I would love to see that. We will see you tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.